Hey guys, AK Freak here, and I'm going to talk to you about rebuilding DA carburetor. First of all, this is a DA-50, and to identify what carburetor you might be working on so you can order the correct parts, if you look on the side of the carburetor, it'll tell you. This one happens to be a WT201B. Alright. Now there's a couple things you want to know about right when you get started. If you're working on a really old DA-50, like serial number 2000 or below, there's been an upgrade. There was like a flooding issue where they got hot and stuff, but they've addressed that. If you look at the reed valve block, you'll see there's a nipple, and there's actually a nipple on the side of the carburetor, and that's a jumper hose that goes between those two, so that when fuel would get to a certain point in here, it just returns back into the block and gets burned up or pulled back in to the reed valve. All right, so here we go. There's two sides of the carburetor. Okay, there's the intake side, which is down here. That's where the fuel pump's located. Then there's the fuel delivery system, which is up top. This is where all the metering takes place. And if you notice on the top half of the carburetor, this is where your high and your low jet is. Now, if you don't know what the high and low is, which you should, on the side there's some markings. The one to the side of the butterfly, actually the choke, is the high needle, and the low needle is towards the butterfly. See, there's the butterfly. So you can tell without looking for those marks which is your high and your low. Now, don't worry about when you take them out, which I bought new needles because this one was actually bent, and I'm not sure how it got bent, but it was bent. So I bought new high and low needles. Here they are right here. And don't worry about mixing up which is which, because they only go in one way. One diameter, the high needle is larger in diameter than the low needle. So also bought new springs. Sometimes I've heard people say their springs get loose and it can let the needle walk in and out. Alright, so let's look at the fuel pump side first. So if we pull this screw off the bottom, you'll notice there's some gaskets that you're going to have to replace. You want to note the orientation of these gaskets, because when you buy your gasket kit, it's going to come with a bunch of different gaskets. The gasket came off with the screw. All right, and this is actually two pieces of a gasket. Okay, if you get a D20 WAT, you're going to get a pack of gaskets that look like this. Some are going to be like these thin cloth looking ones, and some will be thick paper, and some will be rubber. You want to identify the ones you're going to need, and you want to remember the orientation. So for example, these two gaskets are going to be on the fuel pump side, okay? And if you note that the rubber is face down, there's little flappers and stuff in here, and these flappers control the fuel off pulse jet, let things pass through. So we know that this gasket's going to go on like that, and then the paper gasket is going to go right above it on the top, okay? And there's indexing holes so you can't mess it up. So we're going to set those to the side, okay? And we'll set the other gasket right with it. Now, there is a screen in here. Now, they do sell a rebuild kit that comes with the screen, and it comes with a needle and a lever. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pull the screen out with the X-Acto knife, clean it up, and use it again. The reason why is I didn't order the rebuild kit. I thought I did, but I got the gasket kit instead. So I might have to turn around and reorder it. So now we're going to go on to the delivery side, where all the metering is done of the fuel. So we'll pull this top off, and again we're going to take note of the gasket position. Let's pull that, set it back down. Also, there's a hole inside the top of this diaphragm plate. You want to make sure that that gets put back in the right spot, so it's on the choke side, so it faces to the back. All right, so we've got this. Now, looking at this one, you'll see that it's made up of two gaskets. All right, and this one here, once you identify the two gaskets which are here, the paper gasket is going to be at the bottom like this, and then the diaphragm with the little metal sprocket looking thing will be on top in this case. Okay, so again, we're going to set these gaskets to the side. And if you look inside here, you'll see that there's a Phillips screw. Well, this holds this metering. There's a lever here, and there's a little brass spring that sits right underneath that dimple. Okay. So when you pull this apart, you want to take note of a few things. First of all, you want to note that there's these embossed areas, these raised areas on this carburetor. You see my screwdriver's catching on them? Well, if you take a straight edge and you lay it across that emboss, you can see that it's basically flush with the top of those embosses. Now they do sell a specific tool to set this, but you can do it without it. Just remember that those embossed areas are there to set the height of this particular piece. So when you back this screw out, you want to work on a piece of cloth first of all, paper towel or something like that, because you don't want everything to go flying on you. Okay, so we'll back this off, and we're not going to take it all the way out. We're just going to back it off. We don't want to lose that spring, because it doesn't come in any kit that you buy. Okay, I need to back it off just a little bit more. So you'll pull this out, you pull your little spring out here, okay, and there's a little needle, okay. This is replaced in that rebuild kit, but the seat looks good on it, so we're just going to reuse that. There's going to be, once you pull the screen out, you'll see that there's a passage right here where that needle came out that you should be able to see light through. And I can actually see some light through it, through the screen with my screwdriver passing underneath of it. So I know that it's not obstructed. But you want to clean that out, clean your screen out, okay? And you also want to clean out these two passages. You see this hole and right hole here? That's your high and your low metering adjustment. You want to make sure that those passages are not obstructed. So shoot some carb cleaner in there and clean this area out. Make sure that all these jets are all cleaned through here. Make sure that the fuel pump area is clean, and you can also come through this block, that's your return block, and make sure everything is nice and clean through the bottom of your fuel intake. Make sure that everything's clean and put it back together. One last thing I want to talk to you about is the reed block. Okay, if you pull this off, you'll see that there's some gaskets. Make sure you replace all the gaskets. But let's pull these screws out here and pull this reed block. This holder basically holds everything together, but when you buy your kit, make sure you get a new reed valve holder. Okay, that keeps everything square and flush. So let's pull these screws out real quick. There's 4 reed valves in the reed block, and when I inspected mine, I saw that there was a crack in one of them. So that's not a good thing. Some people say that once they get cupped or bent, you can flip them over. One thing I noticed, if you hold this like this, you can install everything nice and neat. Okay, but if you look right here and you look closely, you'll see I got a crack in that reed. See, these things open and close based on the pulse of the motor, and they either close off or let fuel in to this crankcase. Now that gets pressurized and shot off when the spark lights it and ignites it, and the whole thing starts over again. But these pop off, okay? Sometimes they will get used and they'll get a cup to them where they'll be kind of bent away from the body. Some people will say you can just flip them around and reuse them. Well, for $3 a piece, I just went ahead and bought 4 new ones so I don't have differential pressure. You know, if it's bent down one way, it's going to be harder to lift up or close off than in another way. Well, that's it. That's all I wanted to talk to you about. This isn't a complete rebuild video. This is just some tips and tricks and some information for those that have never done this before, so it might make it a little easier for them. I want y'all to take care, and if you have any questions, post them on the forum. Goodbye.